Hello English learners, this is Learn English with Brandon. In this video I am going to give you some listening practice and we are going to talk about gun control in the United States. Now I'm not here to express a certain opinion, but I would rather give you my thoughts on the history of gun ownership in the United States and let you further develop your current opinions on gun control in the United States with wherever you might be in regards to your country and whether or not guns are allowed there. Okay, now the firearm was being invented shortly after the discovery of gunpowder, which was invented from the Chinese, I believe. And anything that I say in any of my videos, feel free to challenge that and comment below if you disagree or if you know of something that I say which could be more accurate. So firearms such as the muskets were I believe were developed around the 17th century, late 17th century, and from then on they have just continued to evolve. Now muskets in the United States, or as we know, rifles or guns, black powder guns, these were used around the 1700s, let's say, but they were used as a form of currency. And when the English were bringing slaves from Africa to the United States, they were trading firearms for slaves in what is now the area of Africa, which is now known as Liberia. So firearms were used as a currency, and shortly after this, the firearm had evolved and became more and more accurate. Okay, now around this time in the late 1700s, in 1776, the Constitution of the United States was written, and the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. I believe it's the Second Amendment. I'm not a law student. So this was written in our Constitution, and I think that this plays an important role in how we perceive gun ownership and how the evolution of guns and how firearms fit into the military-industrial complex within the United States. And the reason why I say that is because if you have it written into your Constitution that it is a right to own guns, then you are basically securing your market population for the future, to always be able to sell lots and lots of guns, and whatever types of guns they might be, or weapons. And the United States is very large. It has roughly 322 million people in it, and many of which who own guns. So as you can see, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that has evolved over time. Now, like most countries, the United States was founded on violence. They took over a land that was roughly populated with around 100 million people, namely the natives, the aboriginals, as we say, the Native Americans. In Canada, we call them the aboriginals. But they used firearms, disease, pestilence to conquer these people, and if it wasn't for having just as many people to fight against them on top of the guns and disease, they probably wouldn't have been able to defeat them, because the Native Americans were incredibly skilled warriors. So guns were used and sold since the inception of the industry. Now, or since the inception of the country, excuse me. Now, when you think about it, speeding things up to modern times, we see all this gun violence in the United States, and a lot of people attribute that to gun ownership. And I understand that, I feel like there is some logic in that feeling. However, if we look at other countries where gun ownership is fairly common, such as Finland, Canada, there's not so much gun violence in a lot of these countries. Gun violence in the United States probably happens most in inner cities. And people in inner cities in the United States generally don't like guns. They don't want to see guns, especially people who grew up in the more difficult neighborhoods or the ghettos of cities. They do not like guns because they've seen the violence that they can do, and they've seen enough of it. They don't like it at all, and this is why they don't like guns. People in rural areas generally have a different opinion on guns in the United States. So perhaps this is one reason why there's gun violence in the United States, but I think it's a little bit more complex than that. It is a quick answer that we can go to, but I do think it's a little bit more complex in saying, well, they have a lot of gun violence, they have a lot of guns, perhaps this is why. So I did mention that people in the inner cities do have a disdain or a distaste for guns in the United States, but what about these rural people? The people that live in rural areas generally do a lot of hunting, and in the United States we have a lot less restrictions on hunting and fishing as opposed to other countries, such as countries in Europe or Canada, for example. There's a lot less restrictions. So people affiliate gun ownership with the freedom to actually hunt. And I think that that's a reasonable thing to consider. And when you consider that, you say like, okay, let's own a hunting rifle or a gun that's specifically meant to hunt deer. Let's stay away from assault rifles and guns and so forth. So what happens when we talk about handguns and assault rifles, guns that are specifically designed to kill people? Well, I think that there is, as we would say, a fueling from the media in many different ways, whether it's movies, whether it's conspiracy theories, whether it's political movements, that pushes people in the direction to be afraid of something, whether it's afraid of their neighbor, afraid of a certain part of the government, or one of these things. And this, I think, this encourages people to have an idea that they might need to defend themselves with their guns. So I think it's out of fear, and then I also think there's this theatrical, romantic idea that some people have where they envision themselves protecting people with their firearm, or using it a way that makes them seem like they are a superhero in a movie or something. I do think that this kind of exists. I mean, the idea of having a gun at your side and holding a gun for some people is just an incredible thing, and I think it requires a very specific mentality. And this mentality, I think, is something very difficult for other people in other countries to wrap their mind around or to really understand. So when you have a level of insecurity that's pretty high within an individual or a certain populace, then I think they're more likely to be inclined to own guns. Now, I'm not saying that this is the only reason why people own guns, but I think that this is one of the main forces that could force a lot of people to own guns. And I think that this mentality is just something that's non-existent in other developed countries, if not all other developed countries. So when we sell guns, when we manufacture guns, it fuels this military-industrial complex, and we're talking billions and billions of dollars. And it's not just the selling of guns; it is more so the development of firearms and increasing the quality of these firearms, or maybe not quality, but efficiency and technology, these types of things. So if we go back 200 years, we had the musket. The musket was very inaccurate, okay? And when people had a dispute, they would say, I challenge you to a duel. And what is this? A duel is when people would get together and they would face each other and then turn around, walk away with their pistols, and then turn around so many paces, 20 paces, whatever, and they would turn around and they would shoot at each other. Okay, so most of the time they would miss because the musket was very inaccurate. Maybe say one person would get shot in the jaw but still be alive. What they would do after that, after generally 2 shots were fired, they would take out their swords and then fight each other until one person died or until one person submitted. So this happened 200 years ago, right around the time of slavery, right around the time right before the Civil War. Okay, so this would be in the 1820s, roughly. Now, if you can imagine, this is incredibly barbaric. Okay, and we do say that violence in the United States is just as American as apple pie. So we go from these muskets, which are inaccurate, and this idea of violence as a way to control other people, to control our surroundings, perhaps our safety. And then we develop more efficient guns that are more accurate, such as the rifle and the revolver, these types of guns. And these guns became more available. So what do you do when you have something new? Well, I mean, you sell it. You basically you have another product to sell. And then in the future you have another product to sell and another product to sell. So this is really what I see happening with gun ownership in the United States. So we have 200 years of the manufacturing of very efficient weapons, maybe 150 years of the manufacturing of efficient weapons, and everybody, more or less, well, not everybody owns guns, but there are so many guns in the United States. Now what do? We have an incredibly complicated situation, and it's not stopping. We have different things that fuel it. Now, when Clinton was in office, when Bill Clinton was president, he put a ban on assault weapons, right? And some people might think that's a good thing. But let me tell you this, if I have stock in the arms industry, I'm going to want Bill Clinton in office. Because if he puts a ban on assault weapons, then all of my stock is going to go up because the demand goes up. So the demand goes up when we have a Democrat in office. And keep in mind, Democrats are just as much warmongers as Republicans. Look at Hillary Clinton's voting record. So the stock goes up, my value goes up, or I can just hold on to the weapons that I own, and then we put a Republican in office and they remove the bans, and then I can sell it all real quick, or then I can buy more. So this is the ebb and flow of the military industrial complex with firearms. Okay? So now we have this complicated issue. We have a tremendous amount of gun violence in the United States. We have rising rates of mental disabilities in the United States. We have failing institutions everywhere, failing criminal institutions, prison institutions, failing schools, failing healthcare institutions in the United States. And I mean, it's not all dark and grim, but overall, things are not getting better overall. Maybe some things in some places are getting better or improving, but overall, I don't think we can make the argument that more and more things are getting better. How often do we have a mass shooting in the United States? Okay? It's become a regular thing. This is crazy, right? No other country does this happen so regularly. So we have all of these guns now. And what do we do? What do we do? Do we just make it illegal to own guns? Well, if we make it illegal to own guns, then everybody becomes a criminal. So that if we make guns illegal, then we automatically remove the freedoms from most families, and that would cause a tremendous disturbance within American society, and probably the global society as well. So I want you to think of these points that I brought up in this short discussion, and just please ask me any questions that you might have so we can expand on this, because I think that this needs to be a global discussion now. And I think it's really good to talk about this in terms of learning English, in terms of learning about United States culture, United States history. And these are the things that I talk about in my classes, especially with business conversation courses. We talk about this because it does include economics, it includes history, it includes policy, it includes international relations. So please, give me your thoughts. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.